We are turning our attention to the tennis. Colm, Boohig, a very good morning to you. We don't have Colm. Oh, you're muted there. There you are.
Hello.
How are you? Right, let's talk Serena last night, first of all, dumped out of the US Open. I think, in fairness, you were saying earlier in the week that you weren't hugely confident that she would go all the way on this particular occasion. She won the first set 6-1, though, did she? Like, is it a situation where the endurance just isn't where it was a couple of years ago, or did Azarenka just storm into it?
She absolutely annihilated Victoria Azarenka in the first set, as you say, 6-1, and she has a fantastic record against Azarenka. She's 18-4 going into that match, and in the 10 times that they played each other in Grand Slams, Serena has won all 10, including the 2012 and 2013 US Open finals. And the 2013 US Open final is the last Grand Slam final that Azarenka has appeared in. She's been in the relative wilderness the last few years. So this is more about the Azarenka redemption as opposed to any Serena capitulation. Unlike the last 4 Grand Slam finals with Serena, where she was comprehensively beaten in straight sets, this was actually a great match. And Serena has been playing really tough, enduring games all US Open. In fact, since the 3rd round, she's gone the distance. And the reason I thought that in the last 24 hours that she actually might get to the final is because, unlike in those previous 4 finals, since she's come back from maternity leave and lost them all, she sweat the opposition all the way through en route to those finals. This time around, she's been in battles every single match. And she said after her quarterfinal victory that she was more than prepared to go the distance in all these matches. And the fact that she won the first set, you would have thought she's in a great position here. But she's actually been losing the first set of most of her matches so far. So maybe she got into some sort of comfort zone. Azarenka was imperious in the second set. I think she had one unforced error. And at the start of the 3rd set, Serena picked up a knock and had to get medical attention. And Azarenka took it from there. So it's a remarkable win for Azarenka, who, as I say, kind of came out of nowhere again this year. At 31 years of age, she's far past what would be considered her prime. And here she is in her first Grand Slam final in 7 years.
2 weeks until Roland Garros, essentially. Is Serena Williams going to go into that with a better chance than she did in this? Is it a sense that she's accumulating her journey towards getting back to her very best? Or what's your take on that?
I don't know if she'll ever get back to her best. I mean, she'll be 39 at the end of this month. Now, she has won the French Open 3 times. But I was thinking to myself last night, if she can go all the way here at the US, that would obviously have her equal Margaret Court's all-time record of 24 Grand Slam titles. And I was wondering to myself, will she skip the French Open, skip travelling to Europe in the current climate, and then wait for the Australian Open in the new year, which is also on a hard-court surface, and that is then when she would get her 25th Grand Slam title, and then she could happily retire. So she's under a bit more pressure now to, first of all, equal the record. I thought she had a really good chance. I know I was saying to you earlier in the week that I don't think she'd go all the way, but in the way that she had played this week, I thought that she would. Now that she hasn't, I wouldn't fancy her doing it at the French. Out of the 4 Grand Slams, it's the one that she's won the least, although she still has won it 3 times. So I would think that she would need to win the Australian Open, and then maybe next year's Wimbledon could be the 25th title, and then she could happily retire just on the eve of her 40th birthday.
It's going to be Osaka up against Azarenka at the weekend. Like, we've had many conversations over the course of the last few years about who is the successor to Serena and how it's kind of been a bit of a jumble competitively. It definitely seems profile-wise at this point, Naomi Osaka is set to become the face of tennis. Like, is that fair to say? Like, I mean, you see that the face mask protest throughout the course of the tournament, which has been fantastic. I guess the fact that she's American really helps, and they see her as kind of like the next Serena potentially over there. Like, I know we've spoken about Coco Gauff and Sloane Stephens and the next generation of American tennis players, but it just feels like Osaka is primed to be the #1.
Well, first of all, on the court, she has an incredible record in Grand Slams when she gets into the final stages. So she's the last player on the WTA Tour to win back-to-back Grand Slams. She won the 2018 US Open against Serena Williams in that very contentious final. And then she won the 2019 Australian Open, and nobody has retained a Grand Slam on the WTA Tour since. Now, this is Osaka's first final since then, and you would back her to beat Azarenka. She has a better head-to-head record. It's 2-1. And the only time Azarenka actually beat Osaka was in the warm-up tournament to this event, which was the Western and Southern Open. And the only reason Azarenka won that final is because Osaka pulled out with a hamstring injury. But what's probably more notable about Osaka in the Western and Southern Open, and what's probably more notable about her in general, is that she stands for an awful lot off the court as well. So Osaka was born in Japan, and she moved to America with her family when she was just 3. And she has been a huge part of the Black Lives Matter protests this summer and the movement. So she actually protested in Minneapolis after the George Floyd murder. And on the eve of her semi-final in the Western and Southern Open, which is the warm-up tournament, as I was saying, for the US Open, she actually withdrew in protest against the Jacob Blake shooting. And it was in line with the NBA protests with the Milwaukee Bucks and the likes. And the tournament amazingly responded to Osaka withdrawing by postponing play for 24 hours, which Osaka thought was incredible because she didn't think that she had the presence and reputation for a tournament to respond to her own individual protest. And because the tournament themselves actually postponed play for 24 hours, Osaka decided to play in the final, but pulled out with a hamstring injury. So this is the rematch, basically, of the match that never happened between Osaka and Azarenka in the final. But Osaka really could be the next star after Serena because, as I say, she stands for so much more than just being a great tennis player.
For fear of doing Bradley Wiggins, of course I knew Osaka was born in Japan and represents Japan, but it definitely feels that America see her as their own. But maybe that's a Bradley Wiggins situation as well? I don't know. Probably a bit more of a national psychology thing.
You should. The more comparisons we can do between you and Sir Brad, we should engage ourselves in that.
100%.
What about the Azarenka, the Azarenka final then, Colm? Like, looking at it, like, Azarenka is a name that for casual fans, people would have been like, well, she's not fallen off the face of the planet and disappeared from the game. And she has had stuff going on off the court. But yeah, the match of styles. And I was devastated to wake up this morning, to be honest, that it wasn't a repeat of the 28 final and the mangled racket and the nonsense that went on afterwards. But regardless, what have we got to look forward to?
Well, Azarenka's in the form of her resurgent career anyway. She's an 11-match winning run because, as I say, she won that pre-tournament warm-up. And she has obliterated her opponents up until the semi-final. Now, Serena hammered her in the first set in the semis. But up until that point, Azarenka had dropped 1 set. To put into context about how well Azarenka is playing and how much of a great matchup this final should be, Azarenka hammered Elise Mertens 6-1, 6-love in the quarterfinals. And Mertens, the Belgian, had dispatched easily of Sophia Kenin in the round previous. Kenin's the reigning Australian Open champion. So that's how well Azarenka is playing. But I think, as good as a game as this will be, and I think it will go the distance, it will go into a third, Osaka is faultless when it comes to the major matches. And I think it will go the distance, even though Osaka's carrying that hamstring injury. As I say, she has a better head-to-head record. She's already beaten her at a slam. She beat her. Osaka beat Azarenka at the 2019 French Open. So she has a Grand Slam victory over her. And as I say, the only time Azarenka has beaten Osaka was on a technicality because Osaka wasn't fit to play. So I can only see it going one way. And I think, as much of a fairy tale as it would be if Azarenka won, considering her off-the-court problems and the fact that she's come back out of nowhere, I think it's probably great for the women's side that Osaka wins because they haven't had a dominant player in the last 5 years.
Can I just ask you, sorry, Owen, just one last one, because I think he, and it might be due to the tiredness, the fact that he was up all night, had dodged your question earlier about Osaka and how successful she can be. Like, this could be 3, obviously, she's only 22, so, I mean, Venus at 7 is well within her range. Beyond that?
I don't know if she has the absolute killer instinct and ruthlessness to rack up the Grand Slam titles. She's racked with self-doubt. And it's funny to say that, considering she is so brilliant when it really comes to it. But she'll often crash out very early on in Grand Slams. Because, as I say, this is her first final since the 2019 Australian Open. And since then, she's come nowhere near winning a Grand Slam in that time. Now, that's 20 months ago, but still, there's been a lot of tournaments since then. And for that reason, I think she'll continue to pepper her career with Grand Slams. But I'd say if she got into double figures, she'd be doing well. She's incredibly talented, but like, for all these players, like in the top 50 in the world, they have similar enough levels of ability, but it's the mental side of the game. But I think Osaka is already a legend of the game just because of what she stands for.
We're going to have...
And she's a hero in that sense.
Very briefly then, we're going to have a new men's champion. We're staring into the void here. This is what the future looks like, a life without the big four. I'm not liking the look of it, to be quite honest with you.
It was a watershed moment, the Novak Djokovic disqualification. But yeah, the game needs it. I mean, even the guys who are in the semi-final...
Do they not need it like a hole in the head to be like? Is it? I mean, how many people are in America, for example, this weekend are going to be watching that over the NFL or over the basketball? If they've actually got a casual interest in all those different sports, there's nothing drawing you to the men's final, I'd imagine. Give us a reason to watch it.
No. There has to be. So this has to happen at some point. Like Djokovic, Nadal, and Federer are all well into their 30s, so there has to be a new player coming through. And the fact is that 3 of the top 5 seeds are in the semi-final here. So the first semi-final, Dominic Thiem against Daniil Medvedev, that should be the final. So if you're not a big tennis fan, you should watch this match on Amazon Prime or Eurosport, because these guys are playing phenomenal tennis. So Medvedev got to the final last year and took Rafael Nadal all the way to a 5th set. You might remember, Owen, we played a clip last year of Medvedev riding the crowd. He did not get on well with the US Open crowd at all. Yeah. And now he doesn't have the crowd to annoy, so he just annoys his opponents. And he annoys them by being incredibly tactical and just obliterating everyone en route. He's yet to drop a set. But Thiem is like clearly the on-form player in the world, and is so far better than anyone he's played so far. Like, to put it into context, Felix Auger-Aliassime, the young Canadian hotshot, he hammered Andy Murray in the 2nd round, and then Thiem destroyed Auger-Aliassime. So much so that you'd worry about Auger-Aliassime going forward because he got such a pasting. And Thiem he's continued that on. Like, some of his ground strokes, his backhand, he has this one-handed backhand where he hits down the line. And as I say, even if you're not a massive tennis fan, just to watch anybody being that good at what they do is incredible. And for a team against Medvedev, you're talking number 2 against number 3. It should be the final. I hope Thiem goes through, only for the fact that Medvedev isn't fit. So, as I say, he hasn't dropped the set, but in his quarterfinal against Andrei Rublev, he picked up an injury right at the end of the 3rd set that he won. And he said after the match, if Rublev had won that 3rd set tiebreak, I would have lost the match because I'm struggling so much at my shoulder. And I don't think that was a tactic on Medvedev's part. I think it's legitimate because he got a medical timeout. So Medvedev might give it all and beat Thiem, but then I would think that the other semi-final winner would have a great chance of winning the whole thing in Zverev or Carreño Busta. Now, it would be an incredible story if Carreño Busta actually won this thing, because Carreño Busta was the man who played Novak Djokovic in that match. Yeah. He's the answer to the quiz question in 10 years' time, who was Djokovic's opponent. But he could be another answer, who was the winner of the 2020 US Open. And if he won it, it would be unbelievable. I think you've summed it up there. There is a chance that a lot of these people could be quiz questions in the future. And beyond that, who knows? Now, I'm only joking. Enjoy the weekend, Colm. Thanks a million for getting us pumped for the weekend's tennis. Thanks, lad.